Today is Wednesday, November 5, 2014, the 309th day of the year. There are 56 days remaining until the end of 2014. On this day in 1811, Catholic Salvadoran cleric, the Rev. José Matías Delgado y León, rings the bells in the tower of La Merced Church in San Salvador City, calling for insurrection and launching the 1811 independence movement. It's a cry for freedom from the Spanish colonists, just as the American Revolution lines up English colonists against the British Empire 35 years earlier. Delgado, populist priest, medical doctor, later, from November 28, 1821 to February 9, 1823, president of the Central American Constituent Assembly, meeting in Guatemala City. On this day in 1811, after the Padre Delgado's bold bell ringing, the insurrection underway. 3,000 guns are confiscated from the colonial armory in San Salvador. Revolutionists seize the royal treasury, taking control of the gold they find there. The colonial government overthrown, its leaders deposed, sent fleeing for safety. Which is not to say the sons of the conquistadors give up, pack their rucksacks, and go back to Spain. Well, they do eventually, but not for another 10 years of sucking resources out of Mexico and Central America. The earnest fighting priest, played by Antonio Banderas, looking great in cassock and Roman collar, sits as provincial deputy in council at Guatemala City, a voice for independence. When Mexico itself achieves independence from Spain with the Treaty of Córdoba in 1821, it becomes the only former Spanish colony to establish a monarchy. As if, say, didn't they have enough of that with the Spanish king? They want to annex Central America. Well, who doesn't? Early 19th century, an empire is still a decent piece of property to rule over. Old Karl Marx is 3-4 years old, hasn't started theorizing about the evils of capitalism yet. Only kid in preschool with a chest-length gray beard. Weird kid. You want to maintain that empire, you have to keep increasing the tax base and establish a good working oligarchy to keep life comfortable for your ruling class. The Padre Delgado, presiding over city government in San Salvador, then a provincial capital of Guatemala, unlike the Guatemalans, resists Mexican annexation. On January 11, 1822, San Salvador secedes from Guatemala to remain outside the Mexican Empire. Guatemalan troops, led by their Mexican overlords, push forward. By the end of the year, the situation becomes so desperate, Delgado and the Salvadorans ask for U.S. intervention. Who does that? Who asks for it? A delegation travels north to negotiate with the American government for annexation. They bring along a nice fruit basket as a souvenir gift. It takes a while, but eventually bananas catch on in a very big way. Unfortunately, just not soon enough to be of any use to the Salvadoran independence movement. That same month, December 1822, Brigadier Vicente Felisola, Captain General of Guatemala within the Mexican Empire, begins his march toward El Salvador. It does take a little while to get there on foot. On February 9, 1823, he enters the city, declaring all due respect for people and property, but you know what, since I'm here and I've come all this way with this very well-trained and disciplined army, just look at those sharp uniforms. And speaking of sharp, check out these bayonets, how they glint just so in the bright tropical sunshine. So, since we're all now in agreement here, welcome to Mexico's newest province, El Salvador. Delgado remains in government work, dies 10 years later on November 12, 1832. He's 65 years old and is remembered as the founding father of the Salvadoran fatherland, where the hard times of 1832 are only just the beginning. On this day in 1912, Woodrow Wilson, a Democrat, former president of Princeton University and governor of New Jersey, is elected to the presidency of the United States, the 28th president. Wilson follows one-term President Big Bill Taft, William Howard, into the White House. A GOP vote split between Taft and Theodore Roosevelt, also a Republican with a loyal following, running as a progressive after losing the GOP nomination under the popular banner of the Bull Moose Party, because when reporters asked Roosevelt about his health after a failed assassination attempt, TR famously declares, "I'm fit as a bull moose." 1912, pretty decent time in America and the world in general, although in April, the unsinkable RMS Titanic goes under with a loss of 1,517 lives after hitting an iceberg in the North Atlantic. In February, Arizona becomes the 48th state, thereby officially closing the American frontier. On March 16, British cavalry officer and member of the doomed Robert Falcon Scott Terra Nova expedition to the South Pole, Lawrence Titus Oates, leaves the tent where the expedition is freezing to death, saying, "I'm just going outside, and maybe some time." Stiff upper lip. You know he's not coming back. By March 29, the rest of the expedition likewise gone on to the last roundup. That same week, Mayor Yukio Ozaki of Tokyo makes a gift of 3,000 cherry trees to be planted in Washington, D.C. to symbolize the friendship between Japan and the United States. And on December 18, 1912, a skull is found in a gravel pit at Piltdown, East Sussex, England, and given as a gift to amateur archaeologist Charles Dawson, who claims the find is proof of a hitherto unknown species of human being Dawson names after himself, Eoanthropus dawsoni, or Piltdown Man. 41 years later, 1953, Piltdown Man is revealed to be a hoax, a fraud, a forgery, a fake, a phony, a combination of the jawbone of an orangutan and the cranium of a modern human. The perpetrator of the fraud never revealed, although Dawson, likely a suspect. 1916, Wilson is re-elected. The Great War has been raging in Europe and the Middle East since 1914, and Wilson campaigns with the slogan, "He kept us out of war." In spring 1917, after German U-boats sink several American ships at sea, Roosevelt threatens, "If he does not go to war, I will skin him alive." Wilson knows about Roosevelt's trophy room at Sagamore Hill on Oyster Bay, Long Island, knows he means business. Plus, interception of a coded telegram from German Foreign Secretary Arthur Zimmermann to that nation's ambassador in Mexico City promises that in return for Mexico's support in the war upon victory, the Germans will help Mexico get Texas, New Mexico, Arizona back from the Americans. Zimmermann says nothing about California. We can keep that. On April 2, 1917, Wilson asks Congress for a declaration of war against Germany, saying, "We must make the world safe for democracy." On April 4, Congress approves the declaration with strong majority, and Wilson signs the declaration April 6, 1917. Wilson has his war, which is hell, let's face it. Old General William Tecumseh Sherman said that, and God knows he certainly proved it's true, but also profitable, especially for the victors, and most especially for the guys who make and sell the weapons. Turns out, we learn a valuable lesson here in getting ahead of the curve. Martinique-born Franz Fanon writes, "It's clear that in the colonial countries the peasants alone are revolutionary, for they have nothing to lose and everything to gain. The starving peasant outside the class system is the first among the exploited to discover that only violence pays. For him, there's no compromise, no possible coming to terms. Colonization and decolonization, simply a question of relative strength." From Rutland, Vermont, this is Richard Alcott speaking.